Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Just as a summary of what happened today at the sit spots during the public hearings.
Well, I think it was Parliament itself at the forefront of orchestrating a framework where ZANU-PF members who were actually coached to say certain things would be the only ones who would speak. So they allowed a situation where it was chaotic. They didn't want us to speak, but there was a united front of all people opposed to the 2030 agenda. And then as we were there, you could see that they knew we were all seated in bay number 8. And they saw that we were all there. And then he starts bay number 12, going all the way. And as it was happening, it was building up so that by the time you reach our place, there will be no room for anything to be said because the situation would have become unmanageable. And then they clearly and openly avoided coming to us. And then you saw that we protested, our members kept on saying, we want a mic, we want a mic, we want a mic. And that couldn't happen, and so forth. So clearly Parliament has abdicated its responsibility.
But procedurally, looking at the nitty-gritties of managing the hearings,
yes,
we saw some gentlemen who were running around, roving around with the mics.
Yes.
Can you just explain to us the procedure in terms of giving the citizens or those who would have come for hearings, yes, the opportunity to speak?
Yes, and in fact, the procedure ought to have been that we should have been fewer in terms of numbers. Parliament must have organized smaller meetings, and within those smaller meetings, you get people to be engaged. But even with this kind of meeting, the mics were supposed to be handled by non-partisan persons. I saw that it was the ZANU-PF, a provincial person, who was actually in charge of the mic. And he was one was moving and deciding who to give. Then the moment they saw that bay number 8, for example, was occupied by those who would certainly have spoken out clearly, they then planted people who would then speak. So the choice of speakers, these were rehearsed speakers who had already been told what to say. And that is completely out of this world.
And looking at what happened, what are the legal implications?
The legal implications are quite obvious. Parliament is not consulted as required under Section 141 of the Constitution. These so-called public consultations are not the public consultations that the Constitution has in mind. So we have clearly no consultation taking place. We have a mockery of a consultation. And if there's no consultation, the resultant act or whatever bill that will be debated in Parliament would be nullity. So this is another very fatal ground for setting aside the entire process on the basis that Parliament has not facilitated public consultation.
Yeah, but what about the opportunity which they give to you to submit your views in writing?
We know that it's not enough. Let's be clear. If they display what they've displayed, which is that they are not prepared to listen to us when we face the MPs, then certainly they won't be reading those things that we've submitted. That's what they're saying. That's what they're telling us. Any reasonable person would tell you that if they cannot even afford to hear you, they cannot even afford to allow you to say a thing, that means they will not read whatever has been submitted. So if there's going to be any screening process, it is just to look at what has been submitted. As long as it is the opposite, it's thrown into the bin or never taken into account. Parliament just wants one view. This is what is coming out, and that view is the view that supports the bill.
We saw you left in half, and you didn't even come here driving yourself.
Yeah, I think I must make the point clear. Perhaps I should use the opportunity to say, you saw that the people were against 2030. There's one thing I might need to say in favor of Nelson Chamisa, who is not around. The persons that were facilitating our sitting arrangements, the persons that facilitated that were actually from Nelson Chamisa's group. And the vehicle that you are seeing me in is driven by a person from Nelson Chamisa's group. So I have my security. The NCA is very, very small when it comes to security issues. We are learning. So my security was beefed up by their security, and I must make that on record. It's very important for me to say that. So what you then have is that apart from the people that you saw there, even Chamisa and others who are not there would be regarded as supporting the process we are undergoing, which is to oppose this bill.
But let's talk about the violence part which happened, because we understand some of your colleagues are trapped inside right now.
Correct. We actually are stopping here so that we try to account. I cannot even go to my car. myself. As you can see, I've had to be driven by others because I understand that a group of people are surrounding that vehicle, and then virtually everyone who was living there from our group. I've only spoken to Senator Timber, and I know that he's safe at the moment. But I'm not sure about Bisai, I'm not sure about Tendai, Biti, and so on at the moment from where we're coming from. So it is outright violence. You could see when we were trying to live in a hub, we were very insecure, very unsafe.
And what would you like to say about the proximity of the police from where these things were happening? Because we read that the security was guaranteed.
That's what the police said. Not only that, they were inside, they were outside, they were wearing their riot gear thing. They could easily have stopped that. The police could easily have been guiding the person with the mic, or you could have been using a police officer or police officers to move around with the mic. That didn't happen. They were just watching. I can remind everyone that that is the same thing that they did with when they came to beat us up at the NCA head office. We said it, and people were saying, some people were doubting that. But today we saw it. The police with complete disregard for what is happening, and that is unacceptable.
And let's look at this whole process. How is the human rights issue observed by this process? What are the risks, not of the protection, not of the security that can be put in place to protect those particularly who are opposed to the
well, I think that is very clear that this government is not capable of protecting the rights of Zimbabweans. They are also not capable of protecting the rights of everyone who would be expressing a view that is against their own. They are only there to protect their interests and the interests of their supporters. So for you to live in a free Zimbabwe, according to the government that is there, you must support ZANU-PF, you must support President Emerson Mnangagwa, you must support the extension. And you saw some of the speakers were saying, no, there's no need for elections, not just that, not for elections, but also that we should not even give a term to the president, let him rule forever. I mean, those are not views that ought to be expressed to Parliament in a platform where you have a constitution that you claim you want to amend. So there is no protection of human rights here. We were quite lucky because at the time that we were coming out, the persons who were, I could sense that it was the security apparatus here. Most of those people would be in the CIO, and some of them are trained. They're clearly, because they are very confident of their own security, which is, and they don't seem moved, but they're able to unleash people. We said even for the whole 1 hour when we were setting, we would just be seeing people pointing to us, making strategies. So everything was around bay number 8. And I'm not sure how I felt sorry for Fadzai Mahere. No amount of violence, no amount of intimidation, no amount of anything would stand in the way of a referendum result that would reject these things. So I'm very confident about the referendum.
No opportunity for you to speak, to contribute to this bill, the violence that erupted. What is going to be the next move for all those like you who are opposed to this bill?
First, we obviously would not be continuing to engage in the processes of parliamentary consultations. Obviously, we would say to people this is not a meaningful process, so we will not participate further, I think, in these processes that are going on now with Parliament, because Parliament is not interested in that. So it's a waste. Now what we have to do is to mobilize Zimbabweans. Now, they should expect that we should have to come out. They might have to shoot people in the streets, so we still have the option of street protests, peaceful protests, to say that, one, we are against this bill. 2, give people an opportunity to express themselves. And then, of course, there are those court challenges that you are saying, which would be maturing in a very short space of time. One of them, which will be joining the queue, is one that challenges the process. I believe that the courts will rise to the occasion in the sense that this is not a consultation. And the courts must be able to tell us what amounts to a reasonable consultation. So it will still be political mobilization and the legal challenges. Those are the way forward. But we cannot keep wasting time with the parliamentary processes of this nature, which will also mean that the entire process in Parliament will just be a foregone conclusion. Because these are the people that want to benefit from the bill. These are the people who are giving themselves an extended term. These are the people that, and then you have someone has the temerity to announce themselves. I've forgotten his name. The one who said he's the chairperson of this as a member of Parliament, the one who was addressing us. He takes 30-something minutes as opening remarks, and so on, tries to assure everyone. And then from the moment he starts giving access to the people, he is disregarding each and every aspect of what he has said. And what kind of a person is that? So they had a bay that they'd organized, which was, I think, Bay 12, where in that bay number 12, there were over 15 speakers who are allowed to speak. And then you move to next. Then after the next bay, you say, look, it's now no longer 3 minutes, it's now 1 minute per person. Then next, you don't then allow people to speak. So they had spotted. So he is an MP. He is a chairperson, and he's given instructions as to that. And they had already surrounded bay number 8, as you could remember. So, look, I think that this is a process which the world must now see that they are not interested in a parliamentary system at all. Because if you then say you want a parliamentary democracy, then parliament must behave itself. And how can you allow such a body in future to be the one that will elect the president of the country with that kind of behavior? Certainly not.
Thank you so much, Prof.
Thank you.